elementary principals have been addressing everything from pickup and drop off to which secretary is going to do what tasks to who's going to be where. Lots and lots of decisions have had to be made, and they've been working on that all along. Quite impressed with that high functioning team because it's a big task, but they're very excited, and I have no doubt that it's going to be a successful opening. Finally, a couple of things. I do know that people are concerned when we close down school, and we were very short on staff last week. We don't want to do that. We know that our kids need to be in person, but hopefully we can put some things in place so that if we have to shut down again, we can provide virtual instruction. This does not mean the next snow day we want kids online. That is not what this means. We all grew up with snow days, and I know they're protected days, but we need to have plans in place so we have a backup plan and can make good decisions and have options. So I think that's it for my report.
Okay, we're ready to discussion items now.
Discussion items. A, Luggington Elementary School open house planning. The goal is December 11th at 11 a.m. To have a ribbon cutting, a few comments from guests and leaders, and then have the school open for people to tour and see, whether you can take a guided tour and or just walk through and wander and see the facility. So that's the plans there for the Luggington Elementary School open house. Next up, bids on Foster Elementary School property. Jesse, I'm going to give this to you.
Okay, so as previously discussed briefly, we did have a formal bid window authorized by the board at the last board meeting, which was set to formalize the process for accepting bids for Foster from any interested bidders. And that bid window closed last week on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And as Steve mentioned, only one bid was received from Data Point Real Estate Development. It was a bid in the amount of $20,000. And one important consideration for this bid is that the purchaser is proposing handling the demolition costs themselves, so that that's not something that the district would have to use bond proceeds to pay for. And there were several estimates of what those demolition costs would be. One which the bidder provided was $340,000, and we actually had an estimate in our bond budget of over $500,000 for those demo costs. So that makes this $20,000 bid substantially more attractive in recognizing that that cost would no longer be a cost to the district. So, Andy, I don't know. Oh, got it already, thank you. So, the intent, as I shared the bid document with the board previously, and the intent is to provide 25 different affordable housing units in 4 different newly constructed buildings on the Foster property, both where the existing school is and across the street where the parking lot is currently and playground space. If you want to, Andy, if you want to just go to what they're proposing. They provided lots of maps of where the existing Foster building is, but I think everybody's pretty familiar with that already. So these are some of the pictures that were provided of the townhouses that are being proposed, 25 of them in total, both 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom being offered, and also some nice green spaces also being provided within that block area. And as they mentioned, they're highlighting the affordability of those housing units, highlighted leaving some of the mature trees in place that are currently there, leaving the existing playground and even potentially doing some improvements or expansions to that playground. And I think a lot of the other details are details that you would need to really read the plan to get a better understanding of, but that's a pretty general description of what's included in the plan. So I don't know if there are particular questions.
We have somebody representing the developer here. Yes. So could you share the timeline with us on this project?
Good evening. My name is Nate Gillette from Data Point Real Estate Development in Grand Rapids. Timeline specifically, we would be looking at hopefully into a spring after the snow thaw, or summer at best. We've got a couple of challenges that we've got to get through yet. The property's not zoned for residential. We've been working with the city manager, talking with him on the process for that. We'll have to go through a little bit of zoning. So there's a few things that have to kind of fall into line in order for it to happen, but it would be our intention to move forward as quickly as possible. We understand that we don't want to see the building be a piece of blight to the neighborhood. We want to turn it into something active and make sure it's positive influence on the neighborhood as soon as possible.
In your proposal, you have a timeline contained in here.
Yes.
Is this an accurate representation of the timeline?
And right now, it's kind of our best guess at this point. We've been working with Josh Wickham from Maryland Construction here locally and pinning that down. Like I said, there's a lot of variables here yet. That's kind of our first whack at looking at it. We think it's realistic, but there are things that have to fall into place in order for it to happen.
And I believe this would be invested funds. It's not a.
This is not a LIHTC project. There's no, it's not contingent on state funding for anything. This is privately funded. It's about a $5 million investment overall for us.
Do you plan on conducting traffic impact studies?
We have not done any traffic impact studies yet, although we've really tried very hard in the design to minimize the impact of traffic. You can see in the renderings that were shown up on the screen earlier, we kind of turned things around a little bit. We had the buildings at the face of the street holding that nice street edge and kind of keeping any cars and things to the middle of it. So we've tried to minimize that as much as possible in just the design of how we laid it out. Yeah.
Mr. Foster, if you could just answer, do you see any issues with this project that would be out of the ordinary?
Generally, no. Generally, no. But anytime the way that the process will work on this one, the school is already zoned as an R2A, which is residential. It will have to go through a PUD process, which is a plan unit development. It's very similar to kind of a special land use. The only difference is the planning commission would have the first whack at it with a kind of a sketch plan of the site. They approve it, goes to city council. City council then says yes or no with comments, and it goes back to the planning commission for kind of final say. With the design that they have, theoretically on that site, the planning commission could permit up to 28 units in a residential plan unit development. But with the 25, they're well within their ability to do that. And I think from our perspective, the traffic impacting on that would be less than what we saw with a fairly large elementary school on site. And I think we all recognize from the city's perspective that a development like this that would be beneficial to all the taxpaying entities, as well as, I'm not gonna say Foster Elementary isn't a pretty looking facility, but it have other residential facilities nearby that can continue to enhance that neighborhood. I think this showcases that.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Jesse, the pickleball court resurfacing.
Yes, thank you. So we have been monitoring the 8 pickleball courts that we have at Oriole Field for the last year and maybe even a little bit longer than that. We're aware of some of the surface cracking that started in the last couple of years. We're aware that it's gotten significantly worse just within the past year. And we've been working with the local pickleball club to discuss bidding out the possibility of resurfacing those 8 pickleball courts. We did solicit bids to do that resurfacing. Some of the cracks have gotten to be pretty significantly structural cracks, and we've filled them multiple times, and it's certainly not a permanent solution. So it's gotten to the point where, in order to really restore the quality, we've got to do a more significant resurfacing scope of work. So we solicited bids, only received one bid from a company called Hensco out of Traverse City, and that bid was for the price of $32,374. We would have been interested in receiving more than one, and we actually extended our bid window to communicate with other vendors about the possibility of submitting a bid. Unfortunately, the one is the only one that we received. So the Pickleball Club has asked that I read this letter regarding this resurfacing project, and I'm going to do that now. Dear committee members, we are writing on behalf of the 150 members of the Ludington Area Pickleball Club and the numerous members of the greater Ludington area and visitors to our community who play pickleball. We want to express our sincere appreciation to Ludington area schools for your ongoing support for the pickleball courts at Oriole Field. In 2015, the club raised the funds necessary to convert the prior 3 tennis courts into the 8 pickleball courts that exist today. Since then, club members have also contributed or raised the funds needed to add wind screens, court divider fences, and a shade pavilion to the complex. We are in the process of funding additional improvements, including expanded sidewalks and a hitting wall, and are evaluating the potential for a second shade pavilion on the western border of the courts. In total, the club has committed to invest and is considering additional investments totaling approximately $150,000. In addition to our cash investments, club members have contributed countless hours on improvement and maintenance efforts. During your November meeting, your committee will be asked to consider funding the needed pickleball court resurfacing repairs. We are hopeful that you will approve the proposal. Thank you for supporting the sport of pickleball in Ludington. And this is from John Reed and Dan Neal, who we communicate with pretty regularly about this. So, for your consideration, we would ask that there would be board action to approve us moving forward with this bid from Hensco. The work obviously would not be done until next summer, but due to the timeline of the vendor's schedules filling up quickly next year already, they have asked for consideration that we can get board action, sooner rather than later. So that's being presented tonight and is an action item.
Jesse, give me a total one more time.
Yes, $32,374. And one more significant item related to that is that this is an allowable sinking fund expense, so we do not have to use general operating funds to pay for this project. So that's one consideration that makes this a little bit more favorable.
Jesse, have we given any thoughts to the future of pickleball courts? We've got a private club that's sinking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars into a facility that's owned by the district. Now we're looking at spending $32,000 and some change sinking fund. Is there been any
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I have not been involved in any conversations that have gone to that level at this point. I recognize the uniqueness of the situation with this being a district-owned property, and, you know, the space is primarily being used for non-district purposes, and so I recognize that that's a unique situation, and those conversations probably would be valuable in the future.
Are you aware of any liability clauses or anything with the club in general?
I'm not. I mean, we can have liability insurance policies on them for our verification to make sure that we're covered, and we can take other measures to make sure that we're covered in communicating with our attorney, but I'm not.
At the point of, maybe Mr. Foster could answer this since he's here, but I don't think technically we could sell that land to them, could we?
No,
Yeah.
no, if the property stopped being used for a, school or recreation purpose, it reverts back to the city.
Yeah. So that's a
You guys
special.
will keep a small portion of it?
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on that? Substitute teacher rates. Good evening. Peg, would you like to address that?
Thank you. Substitute teacher rates, it's no secret that we have trouble covering staff when they're absent. And so the proposal is to raise it to $125 per day. If people don't substitute teach for the money, I'm not under the illusion that subs are gonna come out of the woodwork to sub at that rate, but I think the district needs to use this as one tool in the toolbox to attract people to that position. So I ask the board to consider $125 per day. Up from 85, I believe, so.
And that's actually, that would be in line with what other districts are.
Yeah, I don't know about locally, but I know throughout the state, many are at that rate or even higher. Yeah, the question
If
is,
they do a certain amount of sub days, 10 sub days, you get a free, maybe a year's worth of free scholarship, things like that.
I'm sure there's, the question is about, what about incentivizing it with an Orioles card or something, if you sub so many days, and I'm sure there's definitely creative ways we can, think about that and put a plan in place. Sure.
Leona and I talked about the fact that people were substitute teachers. And so, I mean, it's an important role, it's a tough job, and so, it all, we need people who are there, for our kids.
For sure.
I always liked it when I'd go to OJ and I would get a free lunch. Do you guys still do that over there? You get a little certificate that says that you're entitled to free lunch in the cafeteria. And yeah, I thought, oh, woo, that's awesome.
Well, there we go, we'll have free lunch, and some passes, and, hey, if you love school lunch anyway, right? Yeah.
Okay, Jesse, could you walk us through the bond payment number 19?
Okay, as we have continued to do on a monthly basis, we're at certificate for payment for the bond project, payment number 19. And so there will be board action once we get to that point in the agenda to authorize the payment for the amount of $1,476,005.79. It's been certified by both the construction manager and the architect. And so that was sent out previously for your review. And if you have any questions, I would take them.
And the finance committees.
Yes, we've looked it over and recommend approval. Thank you.
Thanks.
First reading, the Neola policy.
Yes, as, Mr. Dangle indicated earlier, there weren't any major changes, but, this is just the first reading, so if you peruse them,
We also have, come to an agreement with the new superintendent, Dr. Kyle Collette. And I'll give you the specifics of that particular contract. The contract is has a salary of $150,000. There is a 10% annuity with that. There is 25 days of paid vacation. Life insurance equal to 1 times base salary. And the only other cash would be reimbursement of his receipted moving expenses not to exceed $5,000. So, talked to Dave Phillips about this in general, and he said it was right in line with our superintendents are for districts our size today. Mr. Corlett and I agreed to this contract. He has signed it and will be asking for approval tonight. His 3.5-year contract, the half year will bring him back into line with our regular calendar school year. So it's very similar to the last contract we had with Mr. Kennedy. It's about, I believe it's about $6,500 in total compensation more than our last contract with Mr. Kennedy, but that is just the reality of contracts with superintendents at this point in time. Okay, are there any other discussion items? Okay, then we'll move right into the action items. So first action item is the approval of the 2020-2021 financial account audits. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those audits?
Support.
Have a motion from Brett, support from Scott. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes. Second would be the approval of the elementary bond project application and certificate for payment number 19 for $1,476,005.79 as certified by the architect and construction manager.
Support.
Motion from Leona, support from Mike. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We have the bid for Foster Elementary, which is from Data Point Real Estate in Grand Rapids for $20,000, property sold as is. I have a resolution that was written up by our attorneys, so I'll go through the resolution really quickly here. Regular meeting of the Board of Education was held November 15th, 2021, 6 p.m. Whereas the district owns real property commonly known as Foster Elementary School located at 504 East and 507 East Foster Street, Ludington, Michigan. Parcel number 051314001-00 and 051311001-00, collectively the property. Whereas on October 18, 2021, the board authorized the sale of the property through a bid solicitation process. Whereas the board received one property purchase bid, which was from Data Point Real Estate Development LLC. Whereas the board has determined that the bid amount of $20,000 is fair value for the property, including because of ongoing maintenance expenditures for the building on the property, the cost of demolition for the building, and ongoing carrying costs. Whereas the board is determined to accept the bid, whereas a purchase agreement for the sale of the property from the district to Data Point is in attachment B, whereas the board desires to authorize and direct district interim superintendent Peg Mathis or designee, subject to review and approval by the district's legal counsel, to 1, make any revision to the purchase agreement not consistent with this resolution and to sign the purchase agreement on behalf of the district, and 2, take any other action necessary to sell the property to Data, including signing property closing documents on behalf of the district. Now therefore be it resolved that 1, the board hereby accepts the bid, Exhibit A. 2, the board authorizes and directs Superintendent Peg Mathis or designee, subject to review and approval by the district's legal counsel, to make revisions to the purchase agreement not inconsistent with this resolution and to sign the purchase agreement on behalf of the district. And 2, take any other action necessary to sell the property with data, including signing the purchase agreement. And 3, all resolutions and parts of resolutions insofar as they conflict with the provisions of the resolution be the same as hereby rescinded. I'd like to get a motion to accept this resolution.
Support?
A motion from Scott, support from Mike. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next, we have a bid for the pickleball resurfacing. That is, in the amount, the hit total of $32,374. And that work would be starting in the spring or early summer as they could get to it. Is there a motion to accept that bid? Motion from Mike, support from Brett. Any questions or comments regarding that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. I think the battery. Yeah, I think our battery's in. I'm trying to talk about. Yes. Okay, so motion passes on the pickleball for resurfacing. I have a motion on, to increase the substitute teacher rates from $85 daily to $125 as presented. Is there a motion? I'll make that motion. Motion from Brett, support by Leona. Any additional questions or comments?
I think we ought to keep it open for other centers and stuff like that as well, but we not necessarily financial is as well, but this is definitely.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And we have a superintendent contract approval as just discussed with Dr. Kyle Corlett. A motion to accept that contract.
I would make that motion.
Support. Motion from Brett, support from Mike. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And finally, we have our addition of making a change to the language of our curriculum.
I'd like to make a motion to approve all K through 12 current courses where content is being offered in person and in virtual form.
Support. Motion for Mike. Oh, motion for Brett, support for Mike, sorry. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Are there any other items of business or announcements this evening?
I just wasn't able to say, I'm excited for Dr. Corlett, you know, when we were, talking about that, so that's great. We appreciate the work that you have been doing and that you'll be doing until he's on board, there's another 6 weeks or so.
Yes.
Yeah, we count them up.
So, Dr. Kyle Corlett will be in the district starting in December. Most Thursdays and Fridays working with Dr. Peg Mathis to try to make that transition as good as it can. And he will also be attending the open house at the elementary school to get a chance to meet community members at that time. So he's committed to getting an early start, getting up to speed on the district. We're looking forward to that. Okay, did I get a motion to adjourn? Support. Motion and support. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.